The poetry between whiskey and American culture is as old as America itself. Even since the Declaration of Independence, the distilling traditions of Europe were finding new life in the new United States. And though rum, brandy, and gin were the spirits of our forefathers, it was whiskey that found a uniquely American voice. Nothing captures this more than music itself. Since the dawn of the New Republic, American artists of every genre and of every generation have been reflecting on their life, often through a bottle of whiskey. As America's love affair with whiskey grew, it was the bourbon culture of Kentucky that got all the spotlight. But the freedom of the American frontier brought us another global phenomenon: Tennessee whiskey. My name is John Yeager, and along with my wife Lindsay, we own the Nashville-based cocktail creative PourTaste. Since 2011, we have consulted with every level of the spirits industry while educating the cocktail curious. Now, we're inviting you behind the scenes to see the people, the places, and to experience the palate that have helped define world history. Welcome to our documentary series, PourTaste. Tennessee whiskey to me is the overlooked child. You know, bourbon gets all the spotlight, and I like bourbon. I am pro bourbon. I am pro all alcohol. It has paid my bills for 6 years. But most people don't understand what it is. My wife said it best. They don't understand, like most spirit cultures, the general public doesn't understand the innovation that has separated Tennessee whiskey versus bourbon. Most people don't understand the time and the patience it came up, that it took to create that innovation.
I would not have expected the flavor difference to be so strong between the two. They're very different. I almost feel like the 12-year just it has a more potent flavor, like stronger profile. But the Barrel Select is more like even-keeled, balanced. Right. If I was going to sip one, I would absolutely choose the Barrel Select. In a cocktail, I think I'd probably choose it. I don't think I would choose one over the other. I'd probably just pick based on what I wanted in the cocktail. I don't feel like one is better than the other.
So, what most people don't know is that Tennessee whiskey is a card-carrying member to a very elite club. In the world of spirits, when you look at gin, vodka, brandy, you know, the overarching title of whiskey, there's a lot of spirits in the world that can be made anywhere in the world. But there's a few like subcategories that have to be made in a very specific place. So it's not a spirit, but champagne is the best example. Champagne is a sparkling wine that has to come from a very specific place in France. It comes from a very specific grape. It's made in a very specific way. It is so specific that the government of France protected it. So these are beverages and these are spirits that are protected by law. So Tennessee whiskey is part of that club. So we look at cognac. Has to come from a specific law-protected place in France. Tequila and mezcal, specific law-protected place. Tennessee whiskey is part of that. Now, when we go down to Lower Broadway and everybody's like partying their ass off of Jack Daniels, nobody thinks about that. But what I really admire about Tennessee whiskey is the fact that there's a handful of spirits in the world that can only come from one geographical place. And Tennessee whiskey is that. They have done something that is so original that the law decided to protect it. Like people in government that we often don't trust will say, yep, that's cool, that's ours, protect it, nobody else can call it Tennessee whiskey. Like to me, that's cool. But Tennessee whiskey goes through a very specific process, and it's called charcoal mellowing. By all intents and purposes, Tennessee whiskey is a bourbon, but they filter it through charcoal, and what that does is that takes out congeners and other things that might be too powerful on the palate. So, people who are bourbon and Scotch and Irish whiskey fans, they might look at Tennessee whiskey and say that the filtration and the mellowing process that you're doing is kind of cheating. We'll put our juice in a barrel and let it sit for 10 years, and that's how we get the mellowness. But on the other side of the coin, the evangelicals of Tennessee whiskey will say the barrel is important, the aging is important, but we now have this other process that presumably gets a smoother whiskey quicker. Granted, Coke versus Pepsi, Chevy versus Ford. I mean, there's going to be two camps. There's going to be multiple camps forever. You know, no one person is right. But for me, as we consult, as we do events, as we teach people, it's interesting to see both. Whiskey was used in cocktails post-Civil War for sure, but it didn't become the dominant spirit until after 1900. So post-Civil War, we see brands that are they are gaining steam and they're perfecting what they're doing. But it's brandy and gin and rum. As the fads of England are fading out, as we're becoming more secure in our homeland, in the new United States, American whiskey is perfected, and it is increasingly becoming called for in an American cocktail. So 1.5 ounces. So that's 1 ounce.
Right, I know.
There you go. So weak.
Okay.
Now 1 ounce of the sweet vermouth, which is this bottle here. These two. Yep.
I've not seen that before.
It's good. Are you next? Are you going to do it next?
Yeah.
Yes, all right, good.
I don't even drink the
Good.
Okay.
And then we call for 1 ounce Amaro, which is this bottle here. Amaro is an intentionally bittered Italian liqueur. Now, different brands will make an Amaro, just like different brands make a whiskey, but it's a bitter liqueur from Italy. If you want bitters in it, this is your choice, but you don't have to have it.
I'm going to start without bitters.
Yeah. So fill this sucker up with ice.
I made a scoop out of this.
Your scoop.
Thank you, Stephanie. We're good.
It's all so close to me.
Right.
How much ice?
I would do like 2 more cups. That one, and at least 1 more.
Okay.
Hey, that's not bad.
Visual
That's good. Now, because it has a lot of booze in it, we need to let it rest on the ice for a while. So, I would keep going, probably. Good shake, Anne-Marie. First time?
Thanks. This is my first time.
First day shaking. That's right.
Just muddling all the stuff, minus the slow.
Okay. Is that good?
So he's not making you cocktails at home.
No.
Okay.
My floater ginger beer.
Hey, that's okay. See? There was a whiskey culture in America prior to the advent of what became Tennessee whiskey. I mean, starting with the Pilgrims. But it took a handful of people to realize that there was this extra step that could be done in this climate, which does matter, and that produced some really, really good product.
So this is where our tours start, and these guys all worked at the distillery back in the day. So that's Charles Nelson, my triple great grandfather.
That's it?
Yep, that's him. I'm looking, trying to get a hat, kind of like.
Yeah, dude.
You know.
Oh, he's got the flaps.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is his son William, the dog Cooper, and this is Mr. Bollinger, who is one that we have to thank for a couple of the original recipes. He was the one giving the tour that I mentioned.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. That's cool.
And a bunch of folks who are descendants of some of the people in here have been in here for tours and stuff, and they point out like, oh, that's my great great grandfather or something like that. That's cool. So 12 years ago, my dad goes in with his buddies to buy a cow worth of meat from a butcher, invites me and my brother to go with him to pick up our quarter of a cow worth of meat. We're on our way to this butcher, running low on fuel, stop to fill up, and at the gas station there's this historical marker that says Nelson's Greenbrier Distillery, 1 mile east on Long Branch Road, Charles Nelson owns the Greenbrier Distillery. Holy crap, it's crazy. What is this? Go on to the butcher.
So reading this sign, you knew it was your family.
I didn't. At that point, I didn't know. I was like, Charles Nelson, that's a,
Family name.
yeah, but it's like, well, maybe, maybe some kind of common name. So,
Sure.
I kind of thought it was, but I also didn't know for sure. But then we go on to the butcher around a little mile east, asked him if he knew anything about the old distillery. He's like, hell, shows us across the street, see this old barrel warehouse still standing, and wow, this is a picture of it being built. The original spring is still running. Drank from the spring, and then he sent us, down the street.
The butcher was telling you all this.
Butcher, Chuck Grissom, yeah. And then he sends us down the street where there's this old historical society, and that's where there were a couple of original bottles.
Wow, look at that.
And at that point, just about every hair on my body stood up, and my brother and I looked at each other and were just like, man, this is
Hello. Yep, I'm
what
calling.
we're here to do.
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
we've been working on resurrecting the company ever since. And at that
Did you say
point,
it was
it-
12 years ago?
yeah, it was. So at that point, just like, man,
That's a cool label.
yeah,
I like that one a lot. Oh, it's like
Yeah.
a playing card or something.
yeah, right.
That's cool.
Yeah, thanks.
This, in order to be called Tennessee whiskey, you have to filter through sugar maple charcoal. That's something that...
Tennessee whiskey would not be what it is today without Nashville itself. Somewhere between the state capitol and the recording studios of Music Row, the commerce, the creativity, and the community of Nashville has propelled a style of whiskey to become a global icon. As countries around the globe have learned what it is to be American through brands like Nike, Levi's, Apple, and Coca-Cola, Tennesseans are quite proud that brands like Jack Daniel's, George Dickel, and a handful of boutique distillers under them have firmly placed Tennessee on that map.